one, so who knows?
Yeah, I was only enthusiastic about Arena of the Planeswalkers, as it was called, because I wanted it to be true more than I believed it would be true, that this would be the second coming of Heroescape, that there would be another possibility of doing that, because I still love that dice chucker, man.
All right, do you have any other news items?
No, I don't. With that in mind, let's proceed with a quick word from our sponsor. This week we're brought to you by your mom. Your mom. She's a classy lady. All right, so let's talk about our primary topic here. Let's talk about randomness and how to deal with it. Walker, what are your thoughts on this massive topic that we've chosen?
Well, it's done in multiple ways: rolling dice, drawing off the top of your deck, and how to litigate it. Like rolling more dice, having tons of dice. Like we just said, Games Workshop. When your units fire, you're rolling buckets of dice. That's one way to change it up. Or something like Risk, where you're doing multiple rounds of dice rolling to try to balance it out.
Yep. That is one of the ways, try to make sure that a curve is respected. If you're going to use dice, try to make sure that it evens out. 2d6 is always better than 1d6 if you're going to be rolling just for one-offs. You're going to get a better curve that way. Lots of dice is definitely the way to do it. War games have been doing this for a long, long time, whether it's tabletop war games or your more traditional GMT stuff or the block war games. If you tell me to... And besides, it's just physically enjoyable to pick up 20 six-sided dice and chuck them all.
Exactly.
Rather than gather up all your forces, have a massive push, and then just roll a d6.
Yeah, or flip a card, or, because you have more guys than they do, guess what, you win. Some arbitrary, chart that you look at just to see if you win or not.
What's the most arbitrary game you love, Walker?
Most arbitrary game? I'd have to be that new one we just played, Shadespire, where you're drawing random cards off of 2 different decks.
Yep.
Then you're randomly rolling dice as well. It's a whole bunch of randomness, all that needs to be managed somehow so you get a good experience. And it always has been a good experience.
Yeah.
So that would be the one I would have to say that surprised me. Like when I thought about what we were doing, and I said, I can't believe that it is this fun.
Yeah, because Shadespire in many ways is the opposite of what we just talked about. It's not buckets of dice at all. It's a very tight game. Each side only has 12 activations the entire game. Attacks are consisting of 2 or 3 dice, and not every activation is going to result in an attack. You roll very few dice over the course of the game. And so I definitely remember the first time we played, where I just sat there and I looked back at some of the results and it's like, this is weird and unsatisfying in a number of ways. Why do I still like this game? Yeah,
exactly.
Another game like that struck me as a game called Ortus Regni, which I know you've only played a couple times, but it's a very low luck game, except when you fight. And when you fight, you just pull a card off the top of the deck, and that card can mean everything from you are the conquering champion and all of Earth's gifts are yours, all the way to, well, you're boned and there's nothing you can do about it. And when a game... It doesn't even matter how long the game is, but of course the longer the game, the worse. If everything hinges on one unmodifiable flip of a card or one single throw of a die, that's a warning sign, and it often can lead to hurt feelings and unpleasantness.
And D&D, it's a D20, so you have a 1 in 20 variable.
Yep.
And then they've changed it with the Big Fantasy Flight system. You have Descent and Imperial Assault, where they made a huge change, where in Descent you roll the blue die, which has an X on it, which means you've geared up for this big attack, and guess what, you've missed. And they just flip-flopped it in Imperial Assault, where on the defense they've made it so some characters or monster groups roll a white die, where the result will come up just as in you miss. And just that small change, I know it's almost exactly the same thing, but mentally it makes such a huge change.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly the point. There are design ways to mitigate the effects of luck on the experience, but then you can manipulate the psychology of the players involved. And I mean manipulate in the best possible way. And I think that change from Descent to Imperial Assault is great. If I throw my dice and the dice tell me you missed, I feel like a chump. But on the other hand, if somebody throws their defense dice and their defense dice say Omni Dodge, well, then that makes the dodger feel better. It also makes the attacker feel better too, because the attacker doesn't feel like it. And of course, this is all irrational, right? This is just all what the dice are telling you.
That's right. Sometimes you get the players will feel as though their decisions are taken out of their hands, and that the game has turned against them, right? And that is what's going to ruin the game experience for people.
Yeah, and I think that's a good way of putting it. You have to know I find myself sometimes, even for these random games that I love, to sort of talk myself into a position where reminding myself what the experience is going to be like. Letting the game speak for itself and just accepting the fact that some weird nonsense is probably going to happen over some course of the game. Because I don't want to be that guy who gets frustrated over die results. I am that guy often, right?
Okay.
Like I have a terrible temper and I get frustrated very easily. This is because I'm a man-child. But I much prefer it when the game is able to moderate those things. And if I look down at a die with a big X on it that says "you suck," that's going to make me want to flip the table a lot more than looking across the table to see, oh well, he rolled the omnidodge. I did what I could.
That's right. I did my part. It's not my fault that he rolled well.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you said, knowing the range. It's like the myth of bad luck. When people run into a bunch of bad luck and they think they're due for, now it's my time, right? Where it's like, oh, I've rolled poorly for this whole game.
Yep.
And now it's obviously got to do better. So
Yeah.
these next rolls, I'm obviously going to do better. When it's not, it's always the same percentage chance every time.
That reminds me of a set of behaviors that I've seen all the time, and I don't remember doing it myself recently, but I'm sure I did back in my teenage years when I was a role player. When people, when a bad result comes up, either because they rolled very well and it's a competitive game, or they rolled very badly and it's a cooperative game, people start criticizing the way people roll dice, right? If you
Exactly.
if you need your partner to do something properly in a co-op game and the result is terrible, you look at that die and say, why did you roll it underhand? Or roll it more first, or don't throw it so far across the table.
Why did you just slide those?
Yeah, exactly.
Roll it properly.
Like, obviously people can cheat when rolling dice, right? But setting all that aside, that's very rare. That's like, I've only ever heard anyone accuse anyone of that like maybe twice over the course of my life. But like, people just roll dice the way they roll dice. But if it's the result that just ruins someone's day, they get really mad, and I find that fascinating behavior. And I'm completely sympathetic to it, of course, because as you say, we tell ourselves this story that we're in control of our own lives, which is false most of the time, and it's definitely false the moment you pick up a die. But oh man, people get so frustrated.
So did you have any particular games that are totally random that you like?
Totally random that I like. Oh wow. I don't think, like, you mean like War? Like at the level of
War,
where you just,
or
LCR?
or the dice tower where you're throwing in cubes and just random cubes will pop at the bottom and there's like no luck, or it's like a physical mechanism that's denying you cubes and you physically get mad at it. Inanimate objects, like, damn you, tower.
Well, whether I'm getting mad at a tower or a die makes no never mind to me.
That's true.
The thing that I love about the cube tower of Shogun and everything, Shogun and Wallenstein and Immortals, is that it has a memory. It's just, as you said before, we hope that if we rolled badly in turn one, we're going to roll better later on. But that's the beauty of the cube tower. If you've done really badly and all your cubes are stuck up there, they're going to come out sooner or later.
You know the range. Right?
Yeah.
You know how to modify it. How about games that do it properly, that mitigate this randomness or adjust the game mechanics? The ones I have down here are Ashes. Like Ashes, it's where you're going to draw cards, but what you do get to do is you get to pick your starting hand.
Yeah.
And I think that is a amazing mechanism. I thought that was fantastic.
No, I agree, especially in a game like that where you need to be able to hit the ground running. The number of games of CCGs that can often be determined just by initial draw it's very unfortunate. So yeah, being able to pick your initial hand is definitely a good way to do it. In terms of games that let you mitigate luck, this is actually one of your bugbears. You talk about this all the time, how you dislike it when a game has random card draws and has random dice results. I often find that if it's done properly, that one can help with the other. For example, if you're playing Battlelore 2nd Edition, there are a number of cards there that specifically make reference to modifying dice after they've been rolled, or mitigating the results of dice, or things like that. And so sure, you may be drawing off the top of a random deck, but you know that the cards, that's one of the benefits of cards over dice generally. You can plan for it. You've got a fistful of cards and you know what to do, and you can try to shape the game so that it's playing to the strength of the hand that you've got in front of you. That's what hand management is all about. And if you use some resource or some action to be able to mitigate dice results, then I'm very happy. And even when it doesn't actually even out the vicissitudes of chance, it at least makes me feel, again, more like I'm in control.
That's right.
And that's what you want out of a game most of the time. You want the experience, but you want to be able to feel like your choices have impact even when they don't.
And the swing, right? It's always nice when that last, when that you have that one soldier that's holding out against the the multitudes, right? It's always nice to have him, hold the home front and be the hero of the day as he holds back the hordes of units. It's always good to have that one instinct.
Yeah, absolutely. Even if you don't pull it off, just being able to hold out a little bit longer is often very good. One of the things that I find interesting in terms of, again, managing the psychology of the user experience is, so Dragonfire was recently released, which is the evolution of a game called Shadowrun Crossfire by Catalyst Labs. And people really rag on those games for being hard, which is one thing. But setting that aside, people really rag on the randomness, because the way those games work is you have to symbol match to defeat an opponent. You need, this specific resource to kill them out of 4 colors. And people really go nuts about how, well, I didn't draw the card I needed, so I'm toast. But I always contrasted that with a game like the Pathfinder adventure games, which I didn't much like. But at the end of the day, when you're playing games that allow you to roll dice, say I play a card and it says it allows me to roll a die to try to defeat this thing. If I play a card and I roll the die and I don't get the target number, that is just as bad, if not worse, as my never having drawn the card that matches the color that I need, right?
Exactly.
But for some reason, I feel like I've done something. Just the process of picking up the die and getting the wrong result. From a fourth dimensional perspective, randomness cost me my good result anyway. Same as it would work in Crossfire or Dragonfire, same as it would work anywhere else. But just the act of rolling the die makes me feel like I had some participation in this process. Whereas if I'm sitting there and none of my cards let me do anything, it feels all that more frustrating. And that sort of asymmetry, I don't have much to say about it, but I do find it interesting how just the physical act of doing things makes you feel like a participant even when you're not.
Now, do you feel as though this could be summed up into like a Euro versus Ameritrash? Because you can think of multiple incidents where Euro games, they've taken out almost all the randomness, like Hans Teutonica or Tigers and Euphrates, where there's very little randomness, as opposed to Ameritrash games where it's all about plastic and dice. And
I don't know. It's weird, because I do think that Euro games, talking about this element of masking the effects of randomness, Euro games often look less random than they are. So Tigers, I adore Tigers and Euphrates, but there's a fair amount of randomness in that game. There's a fair amount of chance, and it is very much, I think, the epitome of what I was talking about before in terms of hand management. You're going to have this set of tiles in front of you, and you need to play to your strengths. You need to force the game, and you need to force your actions, and if possible, the actions of your opponents, to play to your strengths and avoid your weaknesses. And if you don't do that, the game is going to feel completely random. I know a number of people who refuse to play the game because they think it's all about how many red tiles you draw. It's not about how many red tiles you draw. That's only if you take the most obvious play. If you're always swimming in the exact tiles you need, then the game seems really simple and obvious. But on the other hand, the true art of the game is making a bad hand work for you, and or knowing when you need to take the action to flush your hand. And that's one of the ways that Euro games really serve to. For some reason, if you've got a hand of cards, it looks less random than the throw of a die. But at the end of the day, if you don't get the die result you need, or if you don't get the card you have, it's the same result. But that having been said, I do agree that Euro games generally do a better job of knowing when they need to use randomness and when they don't. There are exceptions to this. One game I think that does not get the reputation it deserves in terms of randomness is Dominion. Dominion is a hugely random game. But it doesn't feel that way, in part because it's so quick and inoffensive, and in part because the market is not random, unlike a lot of later deck builders. But man, if your cards clump the wrong way, you are toast, and there's nothing you can do about it.
I wonder if there's no many complaints in that game because it's not as though you're attacking someone or you're not influencing another player. It's just happening to you, so maybe that's why it's a little more acceptable than it is in other games.
Sure. Well, that raises another question. How do you keep your cool when the game is telling you that you don't get to win today?
Oh, I'm too easygoing, so it usually doesn't bother me so much at all. When it's a 2-player game, it's a little difficult. So sometimes I think because the luck has gone so poorly against me or so poorly for me that it's just not a good experience, right? Because when you're trashing somebody, it just makes for a bad game. I'm always good for just a good game. Like when I'm watching sports, I'm usually not rooting for a team. I'm rooting for good plays, just a good game in general, right? So I just usually transfer that over to most board games. I'm just looking for a good experience for everyone. I enjoy a game when everyone is having fun. So when randomness goes one way or the other too badly, then I just don't have fun.
Yeah. You're so saintly, man.
I'm sorry. It's the way I was raised.
I was hoping for some sort of insight into how to improve my character, but no, you're just you came out perfect. And